So we elect and send our representative to the assembly, and this representative will make major decisions in terms of development, for the welfare of the people, to look after the developmental needs of the people, and so on and so forth. And one of the main facets of democracy is strong opposition, because the opposition will give the government at bay by criticizing various policies and programs. So with all these narratives, with this small introduction, I'm sure the panelists will share their views and insights. And a general reminder, since it is a panel discussion, I would like the audience to be more of, interactive. So without much ado, we shall begin with the discussion. Now I invite the first panelist, Dr. Krizo Yomi, Senior Fellow, Asian Confluence, Shillong, Meghalaya. Sir, you may take time.
As an introductory remarks, what I'll do is I'll just share 3 points that to start with. Let me begin with the nomenclature itself, the opposition-less government. Now, as we all know, Nagaland made history by becoming the first opposition-less government in India. It's interesting to note that this opposition-less government or opposition-less nomenclature has been used by the government of India as a term that kind of contributes to the political discourse that we have. Now, the existing political nomenclatures that exist for such governments are, for instance, an all-party government, interim government, or also unity government. So we have already these existing political nomenclatures for government formation, but what the Nagaland government has actually now contributed to this is with this nomenclature called opposition-less government. What actually baffles me to understand why the government has opted for an opposition-less government, or the term, why they have opted for this term opposition-less. In my simple understanding, one way of explaining this is that in 2001, when the government formed this opposition-less government, there were 3 political parties and a few independent candidates or legislators. So perhaps to give a sense that the government also included these independent legislators, they would have, in their collective wisdom, thought that an opposition-less would better suit the coalition government. However, this also is not very convincing if we look at the other terms that exist. Why then they have not opted for an all-party or a unity government? Again, unity government is perhaps more suited to define and to capture what was happening. But again, for whatever reasons, the government decided to, again, go for this opposition-less government remains a mystery. Now, for interim governments are normally temporary in nature, and by very nature, they have a specific period. So, the reason why the government did not go for the term interim is probably because they would have, in their wisdom, thought that this government is not for a specific period. And then also, to my mind, they probably have come to a certain conclusion that they would not be able to, contribute or play a role or convince the Indian government and the government of Nagaland or the legislatures towards finding an early solution to the Naga issue, which remains, an unresolved issue. So I think given all this reasoning, they probably have decided to go for opposition-less government. But what I don't understand, or what still baffles me, is why opposition-less government when there are other terminologies, nomenclatures that would well define the government. So that's my first point. The second point I want to touch upon is on the trends. The trends as far as democracy is concerned. Now, if you look around the state of democracy around the world, studies after studies have been saying and have been showing that the state of democracy, or the quality of democracy, has been declining over the years. All these international organizations who have been tracking, who have been monitoring this democracy, the state of democracy in the world, suggest that whether it be the International IDEA or the Pew Research Center, all suggest that today the state of democracy is not in a good shape. In fact, I think last year the Economist Intelligence Unit, they came up with their annual report on democracy index report that says or shows that about 8% of the world's population are actually living in full functioning democracy, and about 37% are living in a flawed democracy, while about 55% are living in a where there is no democracy at all. So that's the state of democracy we have today around the world. Now, if you look at the kind of the government formations around the world in recent years, again, we have seen. Just look around. If you look around our neighborhood, we have examples. For instance, you take the case of Myanmar. In 2001, when the military coup happened, the ousted of parliamentarians, they formed a government called the National Unity Party government. So we have examples of legislatures, parliamentarians forming this National Unity Party or Unity Party. Then you also have in Sri Lanka in last year, when they faced one of the worst economic crises since its independence, the new government under President Ranil Wickremesinghe, they have been trying to form an all-party government. So an all-party government as a form of governing a crisis or a transition or to deal with a political economic crisis is not a recent phenomenon. It has been happening for many years, and it continues to happen, that we can see around in the neighborhood itself. So that's basically the sort of trends that we can see as far as democracy is concerned. Then you have the challenges. If you look at again the challenges of parliamentary system of government today around the world, as I say, the state of democracy is in a terrible shape, and I think a lot of studies have shown that there are 3 or 4 factors that are behind this. The first being the rise of strongmen. What I mean by this is that across the globe we have seen the rise of very powerful politicians, and that has, in a sense, diminished the role of opposition, the role of opposition parties. Now, what has happened is that the opposition is reduced to a tokenism or a tame opposition, without any effective role in performing its role as an opposition in the parliaments. We can see the examples of this in Turkey, the rise of Erdogan. We see this in Russia, with the rise of Vladimir Putin. And we can see that in our own country with the rise of Prime Minister Modi. That's, I think, the first point that, and a lot of other scholars have pointed out, that why democracy is in the state that it is today is because of the rise of powerful politicians. And I think the second point that has also been pointed out is the rise of right-wing politics. Now again, that this phenomenon we can see across democracies in the world. This has also given rise to the majoritarian politics. And this majoritarian politics, what it has done is it has marginalized the smaller parties of the minorities and pushed them to a negligible role as far as parliament is concerned or assembly is concerned. Now, the third factor that scholars point out is also about the lack of ideological politics. That's again a major issue. Ideological politics in terms of social welfare, in terms of the great ideological fight that we have seen in the Cold War period, the capitalists and the socialists. That sort of a strong ideological basis for politics is not there today, and therefore the rise of this right-wing politics. So I think if you look at the trends and the challenges of democracy around the world today, I think we have these huge problems that democracy faces. So let me just make my last comment in my introductory remarks to say that I think what's happening in Nagaland, or what we're seeing in Nagaland, is actually a symptom of the larger phenomenon that we see around the world. But I'm still not convinced, or I'm still I still don't understand. I still don't have a reason to explain why the term opposition-less has to be used to define the government. I'll stop.
Thank you, Dr. Yomi, for your wonderful insights. He has talked on the nomenclature of oppositionless government. He talked on 3 points. That is the first one. The second point that I emphasized was on the various trends going on the democratic system of governance. The third point that is stressed on was challenges to parliamentary democracy. So, thank you once again for your wonderful ideas, views that you've shared. We'll have more of discussion during the interaction period. Now I invite Dr. Dovika So, Head Department of Political Science, Don Bosco College, Kohima, to share views.
I have 2 points to discuss, which I will share with you. And I'm very happy that the NSA has organized this program, where they have invited scholars from different areas to be part of this discussion. So when we say democracy, what is democracy? We ask ourselves, we all know what is democracy. Democracy basically means the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We all know that, right? We have studied that in class 5, 6, 7, and so on. But what we see now, the trend that is happening over the world, and something which we have seen in Nagaland in the past 5 to 10 years is opposition-less government. So when we have an opposition-less government, it is a big challenge to democracy itself. The very essence of what democracy is being targeted. And that is happening, as the panelists have already discussed, it's happening in all the parts of the world. Be it a parliamentary system of government or the presidential system of government, we see that democracy has been targeted. And it is being targeted because there is a presence of opposition-less government. Now let's come back to Nagaland. Right. So oppositionless government in the year 2015, oppositionless government in the year 2021, and right now we have another oppositionless government. So we elect our representative to be our spokesperson in the assembly. But when they become part of the oppositionless government, isn't our democracy in threat? Isn't is it not? We can say that it is a big threat to the democratic system that exists in India or that exists in our own state. So why is this happening? Right. When we say oppositionless government in a democracy, we know we all are educated we know what is happening and we know what is the meaning of oppositionless government in democracy. Now, why is this happening? All over the world or even in Ireland, why is this happening? My second point is that it is happening because political ideology is dying all over the world. Many leaders are joining politics, many people are joining politics without knowing the very essence of what political ideology is. Many are joining the different political parties over the world without knowing what is the ideology of that particular government is, or what or that particular party is. So ideology, political ideology is dying all over the world, and especially in a state like Nagaland, we don't have ideology, we don't have political ideology. We have different political parties from different parties coming and forming an oppositionless government with different ideologies forming a government, an oppositionless government. So ideology, political ideology is something that has died. So it is the role of academia, it is the role of the researcher, it is the role of teachers, it is the role of us as scholars to make sure that we let the people understand what political ideology is. When we do that, the challenges that democracy is facing in the world because of oppositionless government, we can somehow solve this issue in our own little way. So with these 2 points, I would like to conclude my introductory remark that it is the role of the academia to make sure that ideology, political ideology is made understood to the people all over the world in our own state. Then democracy will not be in threat or it will not be challenged. And with these few remarks, I would like to conclude my introductory remark.
Thank you to Picasso for sharing your views. He has emphasized on some few points. The first one is how oppositionist government is a big challenge to democracy. He also emphasized on how oppositionist government is a big threat to the democratic ethos. He also emphasized on the dying nature of political ideology. And lastly, he remarked about the role, the challenges, the role of the academy to make people educate about the democratic ethos. So thank you once again, Dr. Tobika, for your wonderful insights. Now I invite our next panelist, Dr. David Sichu, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Southern College, Goldman. Now you will take it.
The topic that we have been discussing so far, oppositionless vis-a-vis democracy that we have been discussing. My two panelist colleagues have already thrown some very thought-provoking views on what this democracy and oppositionless is all about. But for me, I will be diverting a little differently. I will be going to a little different route, in the sense that I will be emphasizing mostly from Nagaland perspective. And when we talk about these political and historical realities, as far as the democratic political process is concerned in Nagaland, oppositionless government, if we were to say in the purest sense, I think yes, 2015, 2021 could have been some of such cases. But even in the past, we have seen how the political dynamics that exist in the state of Nagaland, as far as the democratic politics is concerned. We see that in 1998, I think the 1998 intervention of civil society's NGOs, we see that it was almost an oppositionless government. There was only one opposition. If I'm not wrong, I think Mavio Kia was a lone opposition member. Again, by 2003, we come across a cluster of various political parties. There was a paradigm shift of the Nagaland political system, which was more to do with a two-party system, and it was slowly inclining or turning into a coalition politics, where in 2003 we have seen that so many political parties have formed, and that's how the Dan coalition government came into being. And I think with that, the eroding of party system started taking place. And with that, if you see in 2008, how the non-NPF and non-Congress party had sided with the ruling party. Or even in 2013, we see that. And by 2018, it is a different picture now. And today, it is, of course, a very different picture. We see that even today, when we talk about this opposition list, we come across the BJP leaders saying that, one of the BJP leaders saying that we are not calling them, we are not inviting them, but they are inviting themselves. We come across such scenarios, which itself indicates the nature of the party dynamics that exist in our state, which is very different from other parts of the country or even other parts of the world. So here, when we talk about opposition list, we have to take into context various aspects. The political adventurism that we see in our state, it also reflects, or for that matter, is determined or shaped by a very strong political personality. A very strong political personality that we have seen. In the past, there were a lot of leadership toss-up, if you see, but today we have a very strong political personality that I think is also one factor that also can shape the party system. Again, another thing is that we also come across the stand or the kind of, or the nature of legislature, where they have to be answerable, or they are having various kind of obligations. Again, the public vote banks. Under what reason they are voting? All these are factors that are responsible for creating this kind of an opposition-less government. So there are so many reasons which we have to look into. We have to read between those lines, and we have to track all those in order to come to a conclusion. So ours is very different as far as opposition-less is concerned. So as I said earlier, I'm just trying out my views. And I believe later on many of you will be sharing your views and we can discuss more from there. So I'm trying more of a question to you all, just to create a thought-provoking concept. So later on we will be discussing more from here. We talk about when an opposition-less government comes, we talk about the idea of solving the Naga problem. That has been one reason. And various political parties coming together. I think 2015 was influenced by 2014 Lok Sabha election when Narendra Modi came to power. So that has been one reason maybe. Again, 2021 NPF defecting with that two-third majority maybe, and again supporting the US government. There are so many reasons, so many factors, and here we are not here to criticize any personality or political party, but we are going to discuss, we are trying to come to a conclusion, concretizing these scenarios and trying to understand more. So just some of those views. I believe later on in the discussion we will be having many more things to discuss. Thank you.
A quick flashback. He talked about from the Nagaland point of view, mostly. And he has shared about the democratic principles in the state of Nagaland. He also shared about the political dynamics in our state. He also shared on various factors how oppositionless government is happening in our own state. The political, it is because of the political personality, it is because of the nature of legislature, it is because of the public vote banks. So with these views, we'll go ahead more for the discussion. Thank you once again, David, for your wonderful thought-provoking views. Now, may I invite our last panelist, Dr. In fact, Professor Zavisi Romi, advisor, Naga Scholars Association Kohima Regional Unit, President, and also the President, Nagaland Education Association. Sir, you may then take time.
Nagas practice this type of opposition government since time immemorial. During our childhood days, we have not seen any opposition in our village. No opposition. No opposition party organization is set up in the village. So there was no opposition in Naga society, in this party classless society like Naga society. And it is a way of life, and political party as such system was aligned and is strange to the Naga culture. And we never see this. But modern politics brought this kind of culture, and then we enjoy with lots of leadership, and it was good. This is good. And sometimes when we could not understand during our childhood time, when opposition system of government was not properly understood, we thought that oppositions are enemies. We always thought, no? When we were young, when the opposition congress we thought, in our childhood perspective, we thought they were enemies. Okay, so like that we thought, but it was formed so good, and then you see, as I'm saying, the opposition-less government, no party system, no class system is a part of our life, Naga, and where every elected member is accepted and every member supports the government for the welfare of the people. So it is a very good system. But on the other hand, every member of the elected member should become critics to their own government now. Since there is no opposition, they should become the critics. They should become the analyzer, the political analyst. And there is no opposition to give the right to oppose the government in any harmful act or anything that is going against the welfare of the people. And opposition-less government should be conscientious. There should not be any what is called opposition inside the government. It should be opposition-less, and they should accept each other, and equal responsibility should be shared in terms of the leadership and the authority, responsibilities and opportunities. All should be shared irrespective of the party affiliation, not being dominated by certain political parties. Then we can say that it's an opposition-less government. As Chair rightly pointed out, we are hoping for the unity government, yes. So that way, we can say that our elders are demonstrating the indigenous type of Naga polity or Naga polity, which is also very, very similar to that kind of Greek polity in ancient Greek society. So, in a way, there are so many criticisms as published by the local papers after the installation of the opposition-less government, but and then express the need for opposition in the democratic government. But when we do not have anyone to oppose in the parliament or in the assembly, then what to do? So it should be decided. It should have been decided, no, during the election campaign or prior to the election or general election time. It should be decided, and people should raise voice and then say that if we want to elect this type of people to say to the assembly that we want this type of government, we want this type of ideology, we want this type of political principle, no? And we will oppose this type of government, we will oppose this type of principle, ideology in the assembly. So that type of ideology, principle, people should put up, and then with that, such kind of agenda people should vote. But these kind of things are not happening, and after election, people are saying that opposition should not be there, opposition-less government should not be installed. They are shouting, but when everyone join the government, what to do? What to do? Can you call anyone to go, and you should sit in the opposition? Can any one of you come and then tell any MLA? It's not possible, you see. So this is the situation where we are living, and therefore, whether good or bad, we have to now nurture the idea of opposition government, since we are in this system. And now, therefore, we need to, explore all possibilities, what this kind of government, opposition-less government, can be nurtured, and how it should be run. For example, proper allocation of portfolios, and then equal responsibility. And this also can be good for our people, because it can do away with or remove lots of regional disparities. No? So, because in the past, when there is an opposition, then the opposition people in the constituency where the MLA is an opposition, they always say that, what to do? We cannot do anything this time. You see? They are just complaining like that, no? But this time, there is no opposition, so good idea should be nurtured, so that a good understanding, consensus comes among themselves, and then let them also share their responsibilities, their resources, rational distribution of resources. Rational distribution of resources to all the constituency is required. Leadership is required. So this, I think, this is also one of the best opportunities available for us to ensure that there is a rational distribution of resources and what is called the leadership. So this is one way of what I'm thinking, and I think we also should nurture the original idea of our indigenous way of living, and this is one way we can explore together. But on the other hand, there are some dangers of opposition-led government. When no opposition is there, there is no opposition to oppose the policies and programs which are very harmful and dangerous to the people. When this is there, then it is very dangerous. And therefore, there should be an internal opposition within the opposition-led government. Every MLA should be given enough and the opportunity to oppose any issues, anything that is not good or which is harmful to the welfare society. And people themselves, now there is no opposition, therefore all of us should become the critics of the government. In the past, we depend on the opposition people, opposition party to oppose the government. And when something goes wrong in the government, we always say that, Congress should do like that, NPF should do like that, BJP should do like that, or any party should do like that because they are in the opposition. They should oppose. But today, there is no such situation. Therefore, we, all of us, including all of us, in every individual, should analyze, should become a critic to the government. We should be able to say this is good, this is bad, government is doing like that, very good, government is not doing good, it is not acceptable, it is acceptable. That way all of us participate in the functioning of the government, and in a way, if this our elders practice like this, then we all say, we all practice, and let us try to see that this become one of, Nagaland become one of the model, the best model of democracy government, opposition-led government in the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zavisi, for sharing your thoughts. Let me just wrap up a little bit on his views. He shared on the oppositionist government, and this oppositionist government is there since time immemorial in our society, because in our society we have a classless kind of society. We don't have different classes, and this kind of oppositionist government, this kind of culture is growing out because of modernity. He also shared about the strong ideology or the principles should create during the election and not after the election. He also shared on the rational distribution of resources and also the need for strong leaders. He also shared on the dangers, various dangers of this kind of oppositionist government. Thank you, Professor, once again for your thoughts. Now the floor is open for discussion. You can share your thoughts. You can, if there are any queries or comments, you can keep the comments. If you have any queries, you can direct the questions to the panelists also. So we'll start with the discussion hour. Discussion session.
Before we actually, if there are any questions or comments, definitely you can share it now or later. But I think before that, what we can also do is, if each of us can react to what has been said by each of us, I think what I'll do is I'll just react to what Professor Zavisi said on the role or the kind of likening our opposition-less government to the traditional practices that we had in the past. In political science, we have this concept called norm localization, where an external norm or idea is in the process of internalizing into a system, a new foreign system. These foreign ideas are localized and get accepted in a new foreign system. According to Professor, let's say, Acharya, who says that an idea, a foreign idea or a norm can become or can be accepted by a society only when a certain aspects of that idea or norm are accepted, are included in that norm itself. So from that perspective, I think if you look at what Professor said, perhaps we can think of incorporating some of the local practices, traditional practices that we had in the past with the modern parliamentary system of government that we had, the Western ideas, norms that we have adopted in our society. Now, from that perspective, I would still imagine that while that's something that can be explored, the problem still remains to me is how do we ensure accountability in an opposition-led government. You mentioned about the role of the public, you mentioned about the need for an internal opposition within the opposition-led government. But at the same time, to ensure impersonal and accountable political system, political institutions, you need a certain legitimacy as far as the very questioning, the very positioning of your questioning is concerned. Because today we have this parliamentary system of government where the opposition has a legitimate mandate to question the government. And as representative of the people, they have that legitimacy, and the system, the institutions allows them to question, to criticize the government, to challenge the government and that's basically the key role, to hold the government accountable. That's the key role of the opposition in a parliamentary system. So how do we ensure the accountability if we were to think of a system where you don't have an opposition in the way that in the past we practice? How in the past we ensure that accountability? Once a person is in power, who holds that person accountable?
In order to ensure effective opposition-led government, we need regular interface, regular interaction. And now, if we see the government system, then every party, every MLA joins the government. So there is no opposition. In the past, you see, there was a very narrow concept that only the ruling people, only the people who are handling the power, they manage or they manage the power and then function the government. But now every citizen is equal. Since it is an opposition-led government, everybody can go and freely talk. Recently, I met one advisor, and then I explained the same opinion. You see, in the past, it was very difficult for the people who voted the opposite MLAs who sit in the opposition. And people were frustrated. They feel that what to do? We can't do anything. We cannot enter the minister's house or residence. But now everybody should be welcome, and you should start regular interaction. See, I've been here in the profession for nearly 34 years, and hardly any minister invites us for a discussion, a talk, or asking the opinion. You should start this thing, and you should call people, open your door and then invite. So that interaction is required. Otherwise, once the one MLA or a candidate is elected as an MLA or minister, he segregates. Somehow he is separated from the common people. And then he doesn't want to mix people, of course, because of security reason also. But there is certain certification where people cannot enter into the system, into the function of the government. So, healthy interaction, regular interaction with the legislators to explore the resources, human resources, material resources, any kind of resources available, so as to develop, to ensure maximum development is required. And therefore, there may be so many defects, demerits of opposition-led government, but since what to do, we are having this system now, therefore let us try to explore all possibilities, how can we ensure the effective system of opposition-led government.
That's satisfying, Dr. Yuni. I think Dr. Yuni wanted to, wanted you to enlighten, because you have given your views about the opposition within the opposition. So can you please enlighten? I think you have not answered that very question.
Okay, so the opposition-led government, if it functions, opposition-led government functioning with opposition within or inside the government. If there are some group or political party or certain section of people are being sidelined in terms of the responsibilities or the leadership, then there is certain kind of opposition already existing, still existing inside the opposition-led government. So that doesn't give any meaning actually. So when everybody, because the government as such, it doesn't belong to a certain section of people, it doesn't belong to a certain party or individual. It belongs to everyone, and if everyone wants to join the government, because any MLA is not elected. No, nobody is elected to oppose the government. Every opposition, every MLA is elected to do something in the government, to involve in the government, to legislate, to do something, to involve in the government. And that is why if people, now every MLA, 60 MLA, they say that we also want to join this government, then it's not a personal property, and therefore everybody should be welcome, and they should be welcome and give responsibility. And that responsibility, equal sharing the resources can be possible, and that can be done, and so that every MLA is assigned with certain thing, so that they have certain authority to do something for the people. So that is what I want to see. Actually see our elders who are there in the assembly as MLAs, who are functioning. We sincerely want to see that they unite, whether they are enemies or whether they are opponents in the past, but it's okay, because I'm repeating, but this government, the word government does not belong to anyone. It belongs to the people. And that is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Let me just contradict to what Sir said. When we say, in the context of now, right, when we say opposition within the opposition-less government, when we talk about the legislatures opposing their own government, we don't see that happening. We have 60 MLAs, everybody wants to be in the power. If somebody criticizes the government, or if somebody criticizes the person who is in power, we see that that person is sidelined. So, to be very frank, we don't see opposition within the oppositionless government, in my view. Secondly, what we have seen, since we are we are discussing on Nagaland, let me say we have recently faced the 2023 elections. What have we seen? We have seen the death of democracy even before we cast our ballot. Yes, we have seen the death of democracy before that casting of ballot, because every individual wanted the ticket of two political parties, and those who did not get those party ticket, some of them they did contest elections, right? And people voted these people to power because they know these people are coming to power. So when things are happening before the elections, we see that there is death of democracy in Nagaland. People are clear that which government is coming to power, and they are, irrespective of whatever political party he or she is, people are voting them to power. So we see another challenge to democracy. We know that we have an oppositionless government, but out of those 60 MLAs, only 37 are holding the portfolios. The rest are just supporting from outside. So though they are part of the government, they cannot be part of the government from inside and oppose the government. So your view on opposition from within, I don't see that happening. And talking about tradition, what was there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we cannot expect that to happen now. We need a strong opposition. We need people who will criticize the government sitting in the assembly. For example, we have different standing committees of the different committees that is there in the Legislative Assembly. That is to deliberate, discuss, debate on the various policies or programs of the government. If we have an oppositionless government, who will debate and discuss on those programs? Those programs will just come as it is implemented by the government, right? There won't be changes if there was an opposition, there can be some changes which will benefit the people more. But if we have no opposition, we don't see the program being implemented very efficiently for the people. So somehow we need to continue with the certain tradition that we have in the 60s, 70s, 80s. But it is time. It is time to change if we really think about democracy in the present context. This is my view on some of the problems.
As I was sharing earlier, I think we have to explore further. Is the politics of Nagaland chiefly shaped by issue-based politics? Or is it more to do with value-based politics? Or is it something else which is more to do with political payoff, political opportunism politics? I think we need to explore those various reasons, and we need to come up with some concrete conclusion. We were discussing on opposition from within the oppositionless. If it is to do with within the parties, it becomes more of an inter-party competition or conflict. But if it is to do within that party, be it ruling or opposition, if it is within the party, let's say, if there is an oppositionless, means there is a ruling party. So if it is within the party, then it becomes an intra-party conflict. Here in Nagaland, if you see, the intra-party conflict happened in the past, somewhere in the first state assembly election, somewhere in 1964-65, where there was an intra-party conflict and there was a change of the chief minister. But that was not to do maybe chiefly with political payoff. There may be some other reasons. Now, when we talk about this intra-party conflict, which means opposition from within, there may be so many reasons. It may be to satisfy various interest groups or individual interests, or to accommodate various political interests. So the opposition that happens from within the opposition can be for various factors. And since we don't have ideology as such as one of my colleagues have said, in Nagaland, we don't have much of an ideological differences, unlike the Congress and the BJP that fights elections on the basis of ideology. Maybe in Nagaland, we see more or less the BJP and the Congress are same. Or for that matter, even the BJP and the other political parties are same. In Nagaland, even the BJP eat beef. They celebrate Christmas with great zeal. It doesn't make any difference here. The ideology is same. All the political parties claim that they want to solve the Naga problem. So that is what they say, they proclaim. But ideology here is very different in the sense we fight election not on ideological lines, but we fight elections on village ground. On the ground of village or kill or clan. Some communities, they give great importance to clan or range, and that's how we fight election. So since there is no ideological principle as such, again, it becomes more easy for oppositionless to find reasons. Again, if you talk about the pre-poll alliances and all, the pre-poll alliances under which the arrangements are being made by various political parties, the promises that they give, the structure that they bring out for maneuvering their various political interests within the election. They don't talk about oppositionless. They talk about we will form the government, we will join with him, we will join with that party. We have a very strong support from that party. You know, as one of my friends have said, even before the election, the idea of oppositionless today is more or less already been reflected. So these are some areas that I think we can still delve further. Again, we were talking about unity party, but one wonders how far, because as I have said, issue-based, value-based. I think then unity party can be possible. A single party maybe can be possible, but I wonder how far that can be possible. When we talk about this, we see that the 91st Constitutional Amendment of 2003 talks about, anti-defection, second anti-defection law. It talks about downsizing of the government. And when portfolios were taken away with that 12 cabinet ministers and portfolios and all were taken away, we see that real government faced president rule in 2008. So that itself also reflects what kind of interest the legislators have when it comes to forming the government. So this is again another area that we can explore further. Then again we talk about whether we should really have election. If we are going to have oppositionless, then I think there is no point of having the election. Maybe we can just go for selection, where everyone agrees that we will work for this objective to achieve this purpose. So again, whether election or selection becomes a big question. Again, since here we don't have very strong opposition or very strong political party leader today, we see that oppositionless becomes very easy. If you see the British political system, they have this shadow cabinet. And so that shadow cabinet, they have very strong political leaders from various respective political parties, and they play a very effective role of opposition. And that is where democracy becomes very healthy. That's why if you see the British political system is very mature and far ahead and very different, of course. And today, if you see most of the political leaders from other political parties, we are yet to see strong political party leaders. Some strong political party leaders might have emerged, but they have joined another party now. So all these are factors that we come across. So I think, will there be, my only question is, will there be a very strong political will where they can come to a conclusion that, okay, even if it is oppositionless, we will go for this, as one of my friends has said, whether a single party unity or for that matter interim, and we will be an issue-based oppositionless legislature, but basing on issue or values. Values in the sense that when we are talking about democracy, democratic ethos, the governance ethos to deliver goods and services to the people, to work for the welfare of the people, to achieve the directive principle of state policy, those social economic goals, and whether that issue base can really be taken up if the government of the day is to have no opposition list. But if that is not, then I think our democracy today, even if we're claiming as democratic, I think it is meaningless because LT democracy can never thrive without an opposition government in today's world, in today's context. So it becomes more of an autocratic or authoritarian or dictatorship. So where economy is determining many things maybe. So these are areas that we can explore further maybe. I'm just trying this view so that you all can also ask questions. If you feel that these are areas that we can discuss further. So maybe these are some of my views. We can still go ahead further.
Yeah, for the sake of healthy exchange of ideas, I also want to bring in some dispensation. Like we are talking about oppositionless, to form an opposition within the oppositionless government. And we are talking about the death of democracy. So we are more clinging towards the nomenclature of one of our panelists has mentioned, nomenclature of the very word democracy. Because one of the main features of democracy is strong opposition. Without opposition, it cannot be called as democracy, democratic form of government. So, so we have talked about the nomenclature. So what will be the right nomenclature which is more related to democracy? What you can call?
Yeah, so what I said in the earlier was that, already in the political discourse of the parliamentary system of governments that we already have a few terminologies to define and to give a name to formation of governments. Now, I mentioned about all-party government, interim government, and also unity government. What is important to know is that most of these governments around the world are formed for temporary periods, mostly to manage a crisis or to, in a post-conflict scenario, to manage the transition from a conflict to a peaceful, building up a peaceful state, a nation state. So I think in our context, the government's argument or the government's reasoning to form an opposition-led government was that given the Naga political peace process, an opposition-led government, the legislators coming together could help expedite the process. That was the reason that was given. Now, if we take that as the basis for why the government, opposition-led government is formed, one question that would follow is, would then be the government, the opposition-led government be there for a certain period? Because the nature of all these opposition-led government, all-party government, unity government are all for certain specific interim governments. So, what was the intent of the government in terms of setting up this opposition-led government? Do they have in mind certain time frame that they would want to be a united or an opposition-led government, and they would resolve or dissolve the government after a certain political objectives, a certain process is met? So, but what has happened in the last few years that we have seen is that it is not the first time that Nagaland government has come up with this. Nagaland legislatures, they have adopted or decided to form opposition government. This is year after year we have been seeing this. Even after an election, we have seen this opposition. So the question that, to me, the question that confronts us today as a society is, do we then think of new ideas, as Professor Zabis has also said, to make this the system that we have more effective? Is that the way forward for us? Or do we actually go back to the foundations of the democracy that we have, the parliamentary system of democracy, and then strengthen the political institutions to ensure that we have a full functioning, effective democracy in the state? So I think these are questions that lay before us. I think the fact that we are discussing and debating this issue today is a beginning towards the way forward. In trying to explore the ideas and from the traditional institutions, from Western, from other outside, foreign ideas and norms, so that we can come up with may not be the same as other societies, may not be the same as in other states, in other countries, but we may come up with something that's different, that's unique to us. So that's something also, that is also something we can explore. And I think this discussion itself is a manifestation of what we are doing towards that. I just want to add one more thing about the other, the comments that my other fellow panelists have said on the political culture that we have today. I think what we have today is, in the name of democracy, we have plutocracy. Plutocracy means the rule of the rich and the wealthy that controls the system. So earlier my friends have said about the pre-poll and post-poll, the role of the money power that plays into the elections that we have. So I think what we have is a system that is controlled, that is driven by money power. And unless this political culture, we are able to bring in some change, some structural changes in this problem, it will be very difficult for us to think of changing the system, the kind of political system that we have. We talked about the ineffective role of opposition parties. I think the root cause of that is, again, it falls back to the question of money power, the question of plutocracy that we have. So unless there is some deep thinking, some deep reasoning goes into this issue, I think we are going nowhere.
Yes, one of the best gift that is given by democracy is the adult franchise. But maybe this is, in fact, the most important factor that is, that the very word oppositionless government has come up by the government is maybe because of that. The very election itself, as some of the panelists mentioned about the pre-poll, role of the voters, and yes, it's the money power is such that I was in ground zero. It's such that people don't care about their own vote, their precious vote. They go only for money. I was also offered with money, but I didn't go. I held firmly for the betterment, for the development, ideology. Such kind of ideology, such kind of understanding we should have. So if people are educated with such kind of ideas, then I think this kind of situation might not happen again. Anybody else agree?
It's okay. So we have two forms of governance. We have democracy and we have our local government. How does democracy survive when you have a form of governance, that is the local governance, which is very much authoritarian in character and nature? How does democracy survive in a situation like this?
I'll give that answer in the concluding part. I'll just give time to the panelists.
I'll just add a bit. I think your question seems to be conflicted with two ideas. One is you seem to be, confusing democracy and local governance. I mean, what we have today is democracy at the state level, democracy at the local level. If you mean local level to mean, urban bodies and, things like that. But if you mean local to mean the state, that again, what we have is, at every level we have the practice of parliamentary democracy, which is that every individual has a political right to practice, to have a say in the system.
Sir, my question is, so yes, you said it correctly. So this local self-government, if they start becoming authoritative in nature and character, which they are not supposed to, how does democracy survive?
Local, when you say local, what do you mean?
At the state level or at the village level?
Let that be councils, panchayats.
The panchayats and urban local
If they start
bodies.
becoming authoritative in nature and character, how does democracy survive?
Okay. No, I think that, it goes in both ways. In the sense that whether you talk about the state legislative assembly elections or at the local level, democracy operates at every level. If people does not participate, if the public, if voters, electorates stay away from the electoral process, whether it be at the local level or it be at the state assembly level. I mean, if people are not there, there is no democracy. So long as people express their political views through even through voting in the elections, that is an expression of their political right. So I think at both levels, if people are participating at their own will, without the money and we talk about factors, then yes, I mean there is a functioning democracy. If there are other factors that are influencing their independent political rights, then there is a problem. But so long as they participate, definitely there is democracy.
Yes, democracy means the power of the people, in short, in one sentence. So, when we talk about powerful personalities at the local self-governance level, at the panchayat or at the VTB level and all, the fabrics of those local self-government where that is existing, it is, again, democracy is still thriving there only because the power lies with the people. And the people are electing or they are supporting those powerful candidates or powerful people to be their chairman or to be their village leaders. That, I think the people may, we don't know whether we can say whether the people are rightly using their power or something else is influencing them also. But that itself, again, it is just a democratic practice, but maybe the people are using the power to elect the wrong leaders or wrong personality, or maybe the nature of that village setup or the local governance setup is such that it is favoring such personality or environment.
So we had, even during the previous elections, we had incidents where councils took decisions on behalf of the people. They decided to vote for this candidate and this candidate only. If you do not vote for other candidates, you'll be out of the council. So
yes,
do you not see this problem arising now?
Definitely. It is truly conflicting with that because the people are not able to exercise their adult franchise.
Yeah, so it's a threat to democracy.
Yes. So that exactly is very true. That's why.
That is the reason why I said in my first comment that we should educate the people on the different ideologies. We should educate the people about their rights. Right? That is where the role of academia, the role of media, the role of leaders come into force. Right? When we educate the people, when we let them know their rights, then democracy will exist. Democracy can survive.
I have one thing for proposition.
Before that, let me give my views here. Democracy exists at different levels. For example, at home, there is a lot of democracy inside the family. So if there is something going wrong inside my family, I'm father of my children, see. So if there are some laws relating to the family, so the law of that particular law should deal with that particular institution, like family. So that democracy is the government of the people. Demos means people and kratia means government or institutions. So coming back to the local civil governance, for example, like village council and all, they have their own act, own legislation passed by the legislative assembly. It has its own legislation. The act, Village Council Area Council Act, 1980, when I forgot, 78. So it was passed, and based on that act, this village council is existing. But I see lots of limitation of that act, because, for example, how many members of that particular village should have is not mentioned. It depends on the village, how many you have. So like that, one example only I am citing. So like that, there are so many limitations, so many rooms for the people to decide. So within the village local bodies, they should have lots of authority, people's authority, people's power, people's voice should have to control their own, to decide or to design their own village council. Lots of people's voice is required to design or to manage their own village council within the village, particular village community. But I see that because we were also one of the victims in such kind of situation where the village people have resolved to vote for certain people only, not any other. So that situation, only one or two people were victimized and they became voiceless. So that is why now, recently in the last election also, the people, their awareness about the legal is already increasing. So instead of confining in the village and out of fear, they went to the court and they appealed to the court, and then this is not right. So like that now you see, the people's voice should be there when something goes wrong, like what you are questioning. In certain village council resolution is not according to the law of the land, then there is a room for legal provision is there to protect the citizen. So that should be the ultimate, ultimate action, or what is called things that the individual citizens should do. When the village council or this thing is not democratic, it doesn't become democratic. It doesn't belong to the people. In other words, it goes against the will of somebody. Then there is a law where that law should be used by all of us. The victim should go to the court of the law, and the law should give us their justice.
Now, I can't wait for my concluding remark. I just wanted to substantiate with what panelists has shared. Earlier it was not happening. Now, selecting a candidate by the whole villager is becoming a trend now. And because of lack of legal knowledge earlier, nowadays people are educated with legal knowledge. That is why we are challenging the villagers who have taken that decision. And certainly it's a threat to democracy. Certainly. Yes, please.
Dr. Services specifically, you said that opposition-less government has been in practice since time in the army. But whereas we see, when we compare it, it was customary law that was in existence before. And now it is totally a different thing. We have a democratic system of functioning. And when we compare it to the village, it is particular village only. So can we take the particular village functioning as a democratic way of functioning at the state level or the country level, when we compare it with the opposition-less government has been in practice?
It is not the particular village I'm talking about. Just watch and see prior to the independence of India. Prior to the independence of India, what Nagas are practicing? What are some of the indigenous practice of Naga polity? Or coming to 40 years, 50 years, now I'm 59 years, so 50 years ago, when we were, even though in the, this type of political party system was existing, but not very, very insignificant when we were young. So we have our indigenous unique system of direct democracy, people's participation, directly vote, and then we manage our own system of people. And many people think that in the past our Nagas were uncivilized, uneducated. All these things are, people have that kind of wrong concept. But our people have the finest value, practice, finest value, the purest democracy, purest republic system of government, very, very similar to that of Greek society, ancient Greek society. So, what to do? We are practicing now today. We have our own system. Modern polity has come with multi-party system in India. So we are following. But now, when we have been given this type of situation, what I'm trying to say is, when this type of situation is given to us, when people have no opposition, suppose I cannot go and create another opposition party in the assembly. So this type of situation we are given. I'm not claiming that we should do like this, no? But we are in this situation now. So if this is the situation we are given, then we have to explore the best way how to nurture this idea, and then how this opposition-less government can do better so that people can be benefited. And in this context, we can also borrow from those ideas or Naga traditional practices, and we can also practice here since we are in this situation. So this is what I am trying to say, okay? And then it is very much possible if you study the Switzerland's direct democracy is very, very similar to Nagas, and they also practice, indigenous people, they are still practicing. So we should not be too much afraid of saying that today we are in modern politics and we cannot just practice this thing. So when situation like this is given, I think lots of rooms are also given to us to revisit our indigenous practices. So, and then another view I want to give you here is, we have been educated by the modern education, and it doesn't mean that we have learned new things to go and destroy our indigenous practices. Now I am a modern people and I have learned these new things. All these traditional values should be destroyed. So I should not become the destroyer of the traditional things, but I should learn new things, new education, and then go back to nurture and to improve our indigenous practices. That is what I'm trying to say. So if there are still opposition and all these things, still opposition in the assembly, opposition and ruling party are existing in the assembly, then this type of indigenous practices cannot be practiced. But now there is no opposition. So we should explore possibilities, all possibilities to bring all our indigenous practices so that we nurture this kind of also government and see. And while we, all of us, become a critique to our government, we, now all of us, since no opposition is there, we should start analyzing the government and see whether this type of policy program is really harming or helping the government or helping the people, or is harmful to the people. So it's our responsibility.
You know whether you are satisfied with answers or not. Anybody wants to substantiate?
Both of you asked some very interesting questions. As Sir was also just sharing some views on the traditional and modern. We Nagas, as of now, be it political institutions or various institutions, I think right now we are undergoing through a change. As of now, we are living in a prismatic society, let's say. We are, not fully following the traditional, not fully following the modern also. A transitional, which is also confusing us in many areas. That is what I would view. I don't know whether you will support to that. But we see that even judiciary, for instance, if it is going to favor you traditionally, you go to that. If it is going to favor you modern, from modern view, then you go to that. So, prismatic society where, we are in such a confusion as of now, a transition that is going on. And even this democracy itself, we are trying to bring in that, but at the same time, we are also trying to embrace the modern democracy, which has existed in the Western world, which is far more mature. And so, all this we are trying to blend and we are trying to balance it. So, all this, I think, is kind of a little bit confusing us as well. But yes, when we talk about democracy, even from modern perspective, I think not all the communities also practices democracy in the purest sense. There are some communities who are, more democratic, maybe more republicanism. Some again, maybe a little different. We come even chieftainship, armships, and all those. So again, that again is some variation that again we have to take into account as well. But democracy as such, I think, I think we have to delve further.
Another thing almost everyone of you have been stressing on is on creating awareness among the electorates or the general public on the rights, democratic rights, electoral rights and all. So how do you think it should go about? Because it is not that they are not aware, as our host has also already said. Many of the people, we ourselves go to the candidates and ask for money. So things like that has been happening. So how do you think the possibility of creating better awareness will be there? If discussions like this will help only, or whether there should be a bigger platform where some things should be organized? How do you think things should go?
Can I supplement to that? Sir Sue was saying we should educate the people. But here it's, of course we should educate the people, that is true. But then I want to put something out here. It is actually the educated people who goes to the uneducated or illiterate people and, I don't know, talk about all this or this characters that are not accepted in the society today. Like for accepting money, it is the educated people who goes there and teach them how to do these things. So, yeah, how do we go from here?
So I totally agree with you on the point that yes, people are educated. Nagas are way ahead. We are very educated, but what I also mentioned is we need to let people know the different political ideologies. Okay? So my feeling is that we need to let people know what is political ideology. If we let people know the clear definition of what political ideology of certain political party is, then we will be able to, then the people will be able to choose the right person. For instance, when I was in JNU, I was very much part of the NSA, the youth wing of the Congress. But when I came back to Nagaland and when BJP came to power in 2014, there was no trace of Congress in Nagaland or the NSA. Right? So I was influenced very much by different political parties. So as an educated person, you are very, very right that we get influenced. But once people are clear with the different political ideology, I think changes will come. The very definition of political ideology, we have to explain to the people. And that is what we as educators should do in our classes. You as the media people can do in your writings, right, about what political ideology is. So we are educated, but we are politically uneducated when we talk about ideologies, the different political ideologies. So I feel that is the only option. That is one of the options.
10 years ago, I designed a political training syllabus. Some of the former political science lecturers from this college and from senior people, we discussed, and then because we see lots of untrained politicians here practicing in Norway. They do not know what is state, what is government, what is, as Sir Su was mentioning, people need to know this thing and practice. And many political party leaders, they do not know their ideology, their political manifestos and the constitution of their own political party. And therefore, a kind of 3 months course we have designed. So once a few years ago I went to Federal College, and then this college will be the center of political science training. So, but we could not, I am also a political science student, but I'm not practicing. I changed my profession to education. So that way, political science students and teachers, they have a greater role in this to promote training. So that in the rural areas, I think every village has political functionary that almost all the political parties, they have very similar views, opinions, ideologies, principles, not much difference. So we can also analyze and let other people also, their political functionaries must understand. So that way, this political training is also one method where we can create awareness, and this type of panel discussion going to different townships, maybe only a few people, 4 people, 10 people, 20 people is okay, but we can promote this type of healthy interaction on issues relating to politics. And the discussion should be purely academic to go deeper into the understanding about the concept and not in politics. This kind of to gain deeper understanding about the subject matter on issues related to politics is also very, very important.
In Netherlands, some media house has pointed out, installing oppositionist government in Netherlands will be a mockery of democracy by some political analysts after the recent assembly election. Another survey by Moral Express is that the question was, is installing an oppositionist government in Netherlands a mockery to democracy? Give reasons. So that was the question. And the answer was 90% of the respondents, they have positively give the answer. It is an absolute, some of the respondents have replied, it is an absolute mockery to our land and people. It's crystal clear that participants are only contesting, the politicians are contesting elections for personal gain. And one of the respondents also give, a government without opposition becomes more or less like a dictatorship or a monarch. Some of the panelists has pointed out that. So it is not the first time in Netherlands that this kind of oppositionist government has been formed. We saw it in 2015, we saw it in 2021. And the interesting part is the stakeholders have justified formation of this kind of government that they bring all sections together for another political solution. So that's what the stakeholders say justify the very ethos of democracy. So coming to the role of opposition, the opposition keep on pressurizing the government and they keep at bay regarding the different government policies. The opposition also make changes. The opposition also pressurized the government to make changes in policies and programs. So these are some of the few, role of opposition. And if that is not there in democracy, then it cannot be called as a democratic form of government. Greek ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle also did not favor democracy. Abraham Lincoln has quoted about the famous quotation on democracy. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So likewise, many Western thinkers have given the definition about democracy. So now the inference is the Western model of democracy, which is foreign to our land, is not working in our society. Do we need to come up with a new model or system of government? So as scholars, as academia, we need to ponder on these kind of questions. So with that note, I'll bring to the end of this, I'll close this session, and it was in-depth and enriching and fruitful interaction and also exchange of ideas. I'd like to thank especially the panelists for your wonderful insights and thoughts, and also the participants for your wonderful presentation.